All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm the type of guy that loves to eat. All right? Get your laughs out. Of course, I'm a bigger boy. Of course, I love to eat. In addition to eating, I also love watching shows about food because if I can't be eating, I like to watch other people cooking and eating. That's why I love the Food Network, or Foodstagram, or FoodTube if you want to be nasty. And one of the things that's really interesting that I've seen as a modern trend lately is you get a bunch of different chefs and you put them in cooking competitions. Cooking competitions have been around for a long time, but I've been seeing a lot of instances where people will be pushed into a cooking competition and they are vegan-only cooks. This is somebody that has chosen to go vegan and only cook vegan for like 20 years. They haven't had meat in a super long time. So you get one of these vegan cooks and you force them into a cooking competition where to win, they have to cook meat. Now the thing is that these people are really good cooks, but a really important part of cooking is tasting the food while you're eating and knowing what the food you're cooking tastes like. And you can only imagine if someone has chosen to go vegan and they have not eaten meat in 20 years, this can be a very, very difficult proposition where they're expected to compete against people who cook meat every day and they don't even know what the food they're cooking tastes like. This reminds me of the story of a man called Peter Ostrom. Is anyone familiar with Peter Ostrom? Does that name sound familiar to anybody? He's a guy that I'm sure we'd all recognize if I showed him to in the right context, but he's not a guy that most people know by name. See, the thing was, he was a child star in a little movie called Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory way freaking a long time ago when your grandparents were kids. Peter Ostrom is in what a lot of critics call one of the best movies of all time, but Peter Ostrom was someone who chose to leave child stardom, and instead of continuing his acting career, he started a veterinary clinic, and he's a vet. He lives a normal life, helping animals as an animal doctor. Congratulations, good for him. But nobody knows him by name. Something that I think would be kind of comical is if you see some of these YouTube channels, they're doing deep dives on a lot of the Disney stars that came up when I was a kid, and they find out that they had all these traumatic pasts and Disney worked them to the bone. It was this horrific industry of like burning through these children while they're young, just like working them to death, and then they grow up and they're crazy. What if they went through and talked to Peter Ostrom and they're like, hey, what's it like being a child star? He's like, I wasn't a child star. I was in one movie and then I got a different job and I haven't been a child star in a very long time. And thinking about that then reminded me of something that I found on YouTube recently, which I thought was pretty funny. There's this guy who wrote a book a while ago that was really popular. It's called The Name of the Wind. The author's name is Patrick Rothfuss. He wrote The Name of the Wind, and the book blew up unexpectedly huge. It was praised by everyone, like movie rights were going around. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the Hamilton dude, wanted to make something based on this property. He wrote a second book, but he was 4 years late on writing it. That book was called A Wise Man's Fear. It also performed extremely well. Thing was, that book came out like over 15 years ago, and the dude hasn't written a book ever since, and he's actually made references to wanting to write even more books in this world, this universe. But the dude hasn't written a book in a very long time. Even his publisher is not sure he has written a single page in like 10 years. They have not seen anything from him in 10 years. But that has not stopped the fact that when this dude decides he wants to get on the internet and talk about things in his live streams, sometimes he streams video games, sometimes he like raises charity event stuff. This has not stopped people from asking him writing advice, which I find to be quite comical. Because somebody will get on there and they'll be like, excuse me, Mr. Rothfuss, can you tell me how to write world building? Can you tell me how to write characters? Rothfuss will get on there and he'll be like, well, when I wrote The Name of the Wind originally, the first draft, 30 years ago, this is how I did it. And I worked on that draft for 11 years. It eventually became this, and this is how I wrote this character. And the subtext there is, I haven't written anything in a very long time. Other people will come in there and be like, hey, I've actually seen people do this one. They'll say, hey, Patrick Rothfuss, how do you write books according to a deadline? And sometimes Rothfuss will make a joke about it, but you have to realize that the question itself, asking the question itself, is ridiculous. How does somebody who hasn't written a book in 15 years answer the question, how do I write a book according to a deadline, when dude didn't? He failed so hard. And it's like, why are we even asking this guy questions about writing books in the first place? He's not an author. I feel like by most definitions of author, Patrick Rothfuss is not an author. He's certainly not a writer, right? He wrote a book, so maybe that classifies him as an author. I'm not a dictionary. I'm just a guy who tries to make you laugh. He may have written a book, but the dude has not been a writer in a very long time. People are asking writing advice from this dude who has not written anything in 15 years. He's not a writer. He's just a dude that used to write a book that was pretty good. Let's give him credit for that. But he doesn't write books anymore. Why are we asking his advice on this stuff? 15 years is a freaking long time. I don't know if you guys will believe this, but I'm 30 years old. 15 years ago, I weighed 145 pounds, and I can almost dunk a basketball. I'm only 5'8". 15 years ago, I jumped on a trampoline 12 hours every single day. Can you imagine me watching some kids playing pickup basketball and them coming up to me looking like this 15 years after those events saying, "Excuse me, mister, can you teach me how to dunk a basketball?" I'd be like, dude, look at me. Do I look like someone that knows how to dunk a basketball? Do I look like somebody that could walk down the street without breathing heavy? I am not a basketball player. I am not an athlete. I'm someone that used to be something.
Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If it don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep, no one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.